Good evening, darlings. Welcome to the new episode of Skits and Quibbles. Tonight, let me see if I can get these names straight. We have one of my eldest friends on the comedy circuit, and if I get his surname wrong, he will fire me. So, the first act tonight, Stephen Catling. Yes. Then we have Anthony Heston, young chap, great improviser. And recently got a really big job offer. You know that job offer where you go, yes, I've been working towards this all my life. And he's hosting another gig, not for Groovie Comedy. He wasn't good enough for us. I am very, very tough recruiter, my darlings. And finally, one of my eldest friends, who is Dave Lynch. I do have a story about this Irishman, mind you. Do you know, Dave Lynch and I used to be business partners. I know what you're thinking right now. You are thinking, an Irishman and a Slavonic woman doing a business partnership must include some strong brew. And it did. Yeah, Dave Lynch and I, we could drink for Ireland and the whole of Balkans. And also, on one of those sessions, we decided to form a gig app. So many of you comedy clubs are doing, using our app that we developed on one of our drunken nights. So don't knock Irish and Balkan creativity that is going to be infused with strong alcoholic brew, because like Irish will tell you, Slavonic people agree, anything that is less than 50% alcohol, the slave nations don't trust it. They don't trust the empires to make it. It has to be more than 50%. Otherwise, it's just not the thing. Let's put our hands together. Are you ready for our first act on the set? It is Stephen Catling. Woo!
Hi! My name is Stephen, and I'm the kind of comedian that answers the question, what would it look like if a slug did comedy? How's everyone in the room feeling tonight? Great, because I'm feeling sluggish. Thank you, that's been my time. No, I have more. Interesting thing about slugs, right, is that they're hermaphrodites, which means that they have both male and female body parts, which makes it very difficult for when they have to come out as gay to their parents. Because it's like, Mum, Dad, Mum, Dad, I'm gay. And they're like, with slugs, we don't understand gender as a human construct. Because you see, slugs, they're very slow physically, but progressively they're actually quite quick. Anyway, so I have other things I want to talk about. So last year I was getting very annoyed about the whole Little Mermaid remake, and I'll tell you for why. It's because people have been going online and they're going, because they're using dial-up internet connection, you see. They've cast a black woman to play the Little Mermaid. They can't do that. That's not historically accurate. Let's turbo check, mermaids aren't real! And crabs tend not to speak in a Jamaican accent. Do you know what accent a crab speaks in? No. Trick question. The crabs, they cannot talk. But they do communicate, or how else would they fucking continue in the species? So I'm going to explain that, otherwise this next joke isn't going to make sense. So crabs speak in this process known as stridulation. It's basically a fancy term which means they shake their legs up and down very vigorously, causing them to vibrate. It's basically the human equivalent of clapping our arse cheeks at each other. So with that in mind, the next joke is going to be in crab. Oh, just be clear, this joke is also a knock-knock joke.
Who's there?
Hey. Round of applause, mate. Well done. Now, for anyone who didn't quite get that at home, don't worry. I did it the other week in Kent. We were there for hours. I mean, admittedly, it would have helped if I was actually doing a gig at the time. Like, what do you want from us, weird beardy man? And people saying, like, yeah, we want a historically accurate version of Little Mermaid. Well, if you want that, I will give that to you, but this is what the historically, scientifically accurate version of the Little Mermaid looks like. Can you tell I've been working on my Jamaican accent? If you're wondering why I keep coming up for air, it's because I'm not a real crab. I used to work for the NHS, people trusted me with their lives. Also, specifically in a COVID lab, so have you wondered why your results were coming out wrong? Yeah. So you have to be very careful with these kind of jokes, like I did it once, and this couple at the back got really upset, and then they were like, you have insulted me and my wife's culture, we are now going to leave. So, online dating, what's that all about? So, there's this concept in online dating which is, your vibe attracts your tribe, or like attracts like. Thing is, when I do online dating, I attract two main groups of people. I attract the polyamorous, those who wish to have sex with many different people in a consensual relationship, and the asexuals, those who have no interest in sex whatsoever. Basically, my question is, what vibe am I giving off? They're different concepts, they don't match except with me for some reason. How am I in the center of that Venn diagram? Anyway, but basically, once upon a time, I was dating someone who's demisexual. Now, demisexual, for those who don't know what this term means, it means someone who doesn't develop a sexual attraction until a long period of romantic interaction. What most people used to call having standards. Anyway, during the day, I went to hold her hand, and later I get a message which was, that was very sweet of you to do that, but no! Also, you said in your dating profile that you have autism, and I didn't think autistic people would be into that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, I know I've got autism, but that means have an aversion to eye contact, not genital contact. Just to be clear, viewers on the TV channel screen, YouTube, whatever, I'm looking at the men in the audience, not the women. It's a different vibe if I do the other way. Things have changed. Also, just quick note, as an autistic man, I actually get very annoyed when people say that autistic people take everything literally, because if anything, that is a kleptomaniac. Anyway, but also, at the moment, I'm keep thinking about how I would like to be like the Western Roman Empire, because in many ways, I want to get ruined by a bunch of goths. History joke for those. Read books. Anyway, but I'm going to finally talk about my childhood now. It was fine. And normal childhood, I did normal things like feed bread to the ducks in the park as you do, but I remember this one time, the swan started coming towards me and my father's like, "No! Swan, get away from him, you bastard! That boy is not for you!" And he kicked it, but that didn't deter the swan, it just pissed them all off. So now, right. The swan was coming at me with bloodlust, by the way, just to be clear. You might have heard the urban myth that they can break a man's arm. That's nothing. I had a cousin who got attacked by a swan once, but we don't know if he broke his arm though, because we never found his body. Just blood and feathers, and a note from the swan saying, "We did it!" So my father kicked the swan, and all these swans start charging him like it's aliens. That's the sequel Aliens, not Aliens 1, which is singular alien, because it's a lonely alien. Relatable. Anyway, so my last memory that day, my father's like, "Yeah, take your sisters with you, but father, I am the youngest child by 6 to 8 years, surely I should not be held responsible." "You are the same boy!" And my last memory of that day was my father getting overwhelmed by a swan, his fists raising valley in the air, screaming, "Avenge me, boy!" He didn't die that day, they just broke his arm. Thank you, Panto Crouch. Anyway, so the other day I was actually in the park eating bread for a change of pace, and out of nowhere this swan started coming towards me. I'm like, "No, swan! Long you have hunted me in my bread, but this day we fight. I touched my petrol can, which I carry around me at all times despite fight. I don't own a car. It's because I'm quickie." Swan around me and lit a match and trapping me and the swan in a circle on fire and death. Now, I brought visual aids for this. Here's my swan. It's got the word pig on it. Sorry, it's a pig with the word swan on it. Because I couldn't get an actual rubber chicken or swan in the shops. So I said, what other animals do you have? They went, we've got pigs. I went, that'll do, pig, that'll do. I then pulled out my knife. This is a spatula, because you see, I used to be the kind of comic who would bring a knife on stage because I would leave the audience in stitches one way or the other. There was a reason why I was considered one to watch. But anyway, I then finally took off my jacket to reveal my war paint. Pain and despair, and written backwards on my chest, donate to the RSPCA because I love animals except swans because I can't. I know I did. I know it's written backwards. I did it myself in the mirror. So lesson learned: don't do things in the mirror. So, for example, I got this routine where I do a cow doing stand-up, which I'm going to do it for you. Are we all up for that? Woo! Great, because we don't have a choice. So this is my impression of a cow doing stand-up. Thank you, I'll be here all week. Try the veal. Wait, no, my children! Also, when a human drinks cow's milk, that's normal. But when a cow drinks human's milk, that's weird. What's the deal with that? Am I right? Anyway, before I go, my sister always said, like in interviews, you should always be yourself. But the problem is, as an autistic man, if you tell an autistic person to be themselves, this is what happens. Anyway, I've been Stephen Catling. Thank you. Good night.
Stephen, I'm loving this. This is fabulous. Let's go straight in with the autistic side of things. Do you find that you are treated differently on the circuit at all, or do you find that it's getting better?
I'm going to be honest, most comedians have some form of neurodivergence. Yeah. The amount of us that have ADHD or autism is quite high. I do think there's obviously... honestly, compared to general society, I think there's generally a bit more appreciation. But for neurodiverse, I mean, admittedly, what is stand-up but a man or woman or non-binary person info dumping on an audience, their special interests. So, yeah, I mean, it's a one-sided conversation, again, autism. Or that genuine awkwardness that some stand-ups generally do. Stand-ups or comedians, technically I'm not a stand-up, but I am a clown. But there's a slight difference, but yeah.
Actually, I'd like to ask that difference for the viewers who don't know. What is the difference between a stand-up and a clown, and the different types of comedy out there?
Well, okay, so... one thing that's slightly different with this recording is I used a lot of musical cues and sound effects, but for legal copyright reasons, that cannot be covered. We cannot use the usual things. That's why, for example, in festivals I have to do a lot of the PRS forms and like this. I'm using this track for 50 seconds and that. But a primary difference is essentially format. Like a stand-up will tell more typical sort of storytelling or anecdotal, that's storytelling, or observationalism, while clowning is more, it's basically physical comedy. Like you could think of Mr. Bean as a form of clowning. Essentially I would describe clowning as almost though there are, not all clowning is comedic, there is theatrical clowning. Bear in mind, I never studied clowning. I never went to Gaulier in France to get abused by an 8-year-old French man. Unlike many of my clowning peers. But basically, I would say like clowning is more a physical or absurdist, surrealist take on things, and it's more about play and often can be playing with the audience, while a stand-up is more truth bombs. I mean, there's like we have only 10 minutes and I could get into dissertations lengths of talking on that, but a very rough summary off the top of my head.
No, that's fascinating. That's a really interesting point, because I never really knew that distinction. What brought you to clowning then?
A horrible evolution. So because I always when I started, I was always inclined to the surrealist and absurdist schools of comedy. And as I was doing it as a solo performer, I feel that verged more away from what was stand-up to something that is more described and seen as clowning. I mean, admittedly, some would say I'm not. Some clowns wouldn't technically see me as a clown; they see me as a stand-up, and then stand-up see me as a clown. But I'm basically a hybrid or a high-end diet of comedy. In that I'm both using electrical and petrol. But basically, it was sort of a natural evolution from what I was doing originally on the circuit to what I evolved, which is something you can never necessarily predict the trajectory of what a comedian might start and how they might lead further down the line. But that was the natural evolution.
And I know I heard you were talking offset earlier about being in Edinburgh. You've done the Fringe Festival?
Yeah, I did. So I did my debut last year, Behavioural Problems, something autism. That was a show about being autistic, but really also an excuse to talk about the dehumanization experience I've experienced within the workplace, hence why I was a load of animals as well. But it wasn't really, it was my answer to, so typically autism, when it's done in Edinburgh, if it's done by stand-ups, they usually talk about it, while me as a clown, I rather show it rather than tell. Which is why I rather show autism than tell it. Though, admittedly, I know a lot of clowns who are also autistic, and I even one of a sort of mentor figure, Elf Lyons, was joking about her own show that she's doing it on horses, and being a horse for an hour. And she's joking about how reviewers will say, "Oh yes, this is clearly about being neurodiverse," and it's like, no, it's just a show about horses. But yeah, I did Edinburgh last year. I did very well. I was one of the first winners of the Keep It Fringe bursary, which Phoebe Waller-Bridge, honorary president of the Fringe, founded. I was then nominated for a few other awards as well, like the Malcolm Hardy for Comic Originality and the Actually Autistic Award, Actually Autistic Excellence Award, which is awarded by the Neurodiverse Review, as well as recommended by British Comedy Guide and some other good star reviews, like a 5 and some 4s. And some that we don't talk about because they're wrong, or they have their opinions, which are different.
And I wanted to ask you about awards. How can comedians or performers use that to springboard and improve in their careers?
I mean, generally it looks better on the CV or a poster if there's some, at least on the poster, if there's laurel wreaths or star reviews, because I think that that could make or break a difference between someone seeing one show or another. With someone who's just doing an interesting concept to someone who's doing an interesting concept, but has also had industry back. Admittedly, the truth of the matter, the audience don't necessarily care, but the industry does, and I think it's certainly helped with applications with basic and. Either for doing festivals or doing clubs, which is, I say, I've done, here's my CV, these credits, and some people will buy and acknowledge, others care less on that, and care more about many other things, but generally each award, each review, positive review, should be the springboard for the next achievements to help grow, expand to bigger things, and as you do it, obviously with the high quality, you'll bring more audience are coming back, and then you're hopefully doing bigger venues in the subsequent years with then getting more acclaim, which obviously, hopefully, progression.
Fantastic. And where is your trajectory taking you this year?
So, unfortunately, I'm not doing Edinburgh this year because money is a massive, horrible money pit. But also because no one wanted my show this year. No, Edinburgh runs on novelty.
Right.
So they'd rather a new show than a show that has already been done with them. There are obviously exceptions. For example, if you look at the Pleasance application, they generally want new shows of emerging or established acts. They might consider shows that have already been with them in the previous year, but this is not a common thing. And then very rarely, and the key word, very rarely will they take a show that was successful at another venue. A company like, say, if it was successful at Assembly or Girls Balloon or Underbelly or The Space, etc. And this is often the same, especially with the other venues, will consider that as well. So that's why simply the places I wanted, didn't want it this year. But that's all right, because that means I have more money next year to burn in the pit that is Edinburgh Fridge, assuming it doesn't implode itself, which is something you keep hearing people talk about in the industry, because we're all talking about when's it going to implode, because the landlords keep asking for, because cost of living, landlords are asking more, people are being fair, and it's not just impacting the comedians, it impacts the audience, which means there's less audience, meaning it's getting so basically sort of this year was more of just if I could bring up the show back up to Edinburgh, or at least do it at other festivals that aren't Edinburgh, while writing the shows that I will be doing in the subsequent years, rather than, because I think people often feel this pressure to keep generating a new show every year, which is to write 50 minutes of a really good show every year is a lot of pressure, especially when some of us aren't necessarily doing it full time as our full time gig. Means not all of us have had that privilege to be able to, because we also, unfortunately, some of us, even though we're not supposed to talk about it, day jobs, means that's not always necessarily possible.
This has been
healthy. This
is fascinating. I could talk to you all day about this. And thank you so much for your insight into the industry. That's been really, really interesting. Stephen Catling. Woo!
Stephen was shot for his revealing of the industry secrets.
Now, for the youngster, I mean, he is a youngster, he's cute and everything. Way too old for me. He's over the age of 21, so, hey, I can just still allow him to go on the set. Yes, the cougar I am. Please welcome to the set, Anthony Heston! Woo-woo!
Hello, my name is Anthony. You probably can't tell, but I'm actually Polish. It's true, whilst my mum was out stealing your jobs, I stole your accent. Growing up Polish, my mum was always mispronouncing stuff. She'd try and say phrases like son you can't, but in her accent it would always come out as son you cunt. One day I picked her up on it and said, Mum, it's actually pronounced can't, not cunt. And she said, yeah, I know. Ruined my 12th birthday party. I was on a work call the other day, and all of my colleagues were talking about growing their own fruit. And they were like, oh, Anthony, you've got to get into growing your own fruit. It's amazing. And all I thought was, my mum didn't come here from Poland so I could pick my own fucking fruit. That's offensive, right? Like, no one in the office is telling the French guy to stop sleeping around. Whenever I meet a new audience, I always like to start talking about being Polish, because I feel like otherwise you'd all just think I was a posh twat. Thanks for confirming that, madam. Well, I'm not that posh, right? I've never shot a pheasant. I failed GCSE Latin. I've played golf, but only like 30 times. It's like hardly excessive, right? But I'm aware of how I look, right? A lot of people tell me that I look like a Tory. I'm not a Tory, right? And I was thinking, how could I put this to good use, right? Maybe I could join the Tory party and try to fuck them up from within. What I've realised is they're doing a pretty good job of that themselves.
Woo!
I told that joke at a gig recently, and a lady at the back of the room heckled me. She said, "Oh my goodness, you do look like a Taurus." And I said, "Mum, not now." But this isn't going to make me sound any less of a Tory, but I actually ride a folding bike. Yeah, it's tough riding a folding bike, right? Because nobody's ever seen somebody on a folding bike and thought, "Oh, I really want to go for a drink with that guy." But I love my folding bike. I go everywhere with my folding bike. I once went to a nightclub with my folding bike, right? And I'm walking in, and the bouncer stops me. He says, "Excuse me, mate, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm coming in. I brought my bike. I hope that's all right." And he says, "I'm sorry, mate. You're gonna have to lock that up outside." And I said, "I'm sorry. I don't have a lock. It's a folding bike. I take it everywhere I go." And he says, "That's great, but that sounds like a you problem." And I said, "Not if I write a Google review." I'll never forget what he said to me next. He said, "Mate, do you have any idea where you are?" And I said, "No, not really." He said, "Well, good luck writing that Google review," and slammed the door in my face. Yeah, rough day. I don't. But when the bike's in the shop, I've got to take the bus. I was on the bus the other day, and I saw somebody trimming their toenails, which is just completely unacceptable behaviour from a bus driver. No transition here, but I've got a hot mum. I do, right? And like growing up with a hot mum, like you get all of the challenges you'd expect, but there are some benefits, right? Like every year after Parents' Evening, all of my teachers would try a lot harder. And I remember one year in particular after Parents' Evening, my mum was like, "Oh, Mr. Monaghan is so nice. Like he's called home 3 times this week to check in on your homework." And I was like, "Mum, I'm pretty sure Mr. Monaghan's a sex pest. Like, he doesn't even set me homework. He teaches PE." I'm trying to get promoted at work so I can sack my boss. 2 promotions I can actually do it. Right? It sounds a little harsh, right? But my boss, he's one of these terrible human beings who's always bragging about how he earns more money than his brother, who's in a coma.
Oh,
that's not okay, right? But he's my boss, right? So I've got to try and stay on his good side. Every morning I go in, I pay him a compliment. This morning I went in and I said, "Greg, loving the haircut, mate. It's looking really good on you." And he said, "Fuck off, Anthony, I'm bald." I'm lucky to still have a job. A weird thing's been happening at my local leisure centre. These are the problems in my life. Quite often I'll turn up and all of the lockers will be taken, right? And it turns out what's been happening is loads of the customers have been taking the locker keys home with them to guarantee themselves lockers. And it's so frustrating, right? Because I've got to leave my stuff by the side of the pool and it always gets wet and I'm forever arching my neck as I'm doing lengths to try and keep an eye on it. And so the other day, I stole one! I did it! This is big for me, right? Like, I get it, right? There will be some of you sat at home, like, and you'll be the first people in your family to go to university, right? And that's a big deal. That's a big deal. I'm the first in mine to commit a crime. This is exciting, guys. I'm starting my thug life. But I'll get a little bit more personal. I actually broke up with my ex-girlfriend of 7 years last year. No thanks. It's been hard, not having anyone to split rent with. It was quite a serious relationship. We had cats, Harry and Sally, like from the film. Which I always thought were really cute names until a mate pointed out it was a weird choice for a brother and sister. But what I've realised about relationships is I can't break up with people, right? I can't break up with people. Every time I try, I just end up pouring my heart out and saying all of these really lovely things about them. And they're always like, "Anthony, if all of that's true, why are we breaking up?" And I don't know how to answer that question, right? Which is why I was with my ex for 7 years. That joke might have been more for me than you. But I've been dating again. Dating's been fun. Thank you. But what I've learned about dating is that people think that where you take them is a reflection of how you feel about them, and no woman wants that to be McDonald's. But I used to be really insistent on this point, right? At some point on a first date, I would always try and work in a trip to McDonald's, right? But weirdly, like the last 3 dates I took to McDonald's, they all ordered the same thing: an Uber home. But yeah, I've been single a while now, and I've had a lot of time to reflect on my on my love life. And I thought the other day I was thinking back to when I was 11 years old, when I was first in love. I still remember her, Molly. I met her on my very first day of secondary school. We were in the same form. We used to go to school the same way. She was blonde. She was beautiful. She was everything I wanted. And one day I'm sat in geography, and my mate Sam turns to me. She says, "Anthony, if you ask Molly out right now, I think she'll say yes." And we're in the middle of a lesson, right? And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how do I do this? How do I do this? And so I scribble it down on a piece of paper, and I pass it to Sam, and I ask Sam to put it in Molly's pencil case. And she does, and 10 minutes later, Molly finds the note, and she's looking at the note. And it's at this point I realise I've forgotten to write my name on it. and Molly's looking around, sort of wondering, you know, who's written this note? Who's written this note? She's asking people, who's asked me out? Who's asked me out? John fucking Clooney in my class is like, it's me. They got married. All right, they didn't get married, but John fingered her at prom. That could have been me. That could have been me. All right, I'll finish with this. Growing up with a Polish mother, I always saw her behaving as if she was a guest in this country. And the way that's rubbed off on me is I'm a particularly non-confrontational person. I once agreed to split a bar tab and ended up paying £40 for a Diet Coke. Oh. Which didn't even fucking arrive. But you know, it's something I'm actively working on, right? And the other day I noticed that my flatmates were stealing. I walked into the shower and realised it was just my bottle of shower gel there. Guys, this is a big deal, right? Think about the precedent this sets, right? The people you live with are stealing from you. I know it's only shower gel, but where does it end? Anyway, I thought I'd caught the thief, right? So I pulled her to one side and said, "Mum, you've been using my shower gel, Mum?" And she said, "No, son, I bought you that shower gel. You cunt." Thanks very much. I've been Anthony Heston.
Fantastic set. Really enjoyed it. How did you get started in comedy?
How did I get started? I tried to write some material, like every comic does, and I had very low confidence in that material. So I went and did a course with the Angel Comedy Club, and that was about 6 weeks. And by the end of that, I had a set that I felt was sort of good enough to try and put out into the world. I look back on it now and I laugh, and I don't tell any of those jokes. But it was a starting point, and that's how I got into it. I
really like that. I've not heard any comic, whether it's admitting to it, but talk about training, and I think that's really important. Do they help you with structuring sets? What sort of training is it?
I would say it was pretty free form. It's very much kind of just getting you out there and getting you writing material and and watching more comedy and trying to see what are the things that you like, what are the things that tickle you, and then reflect on your own life and try to bring out bits of that, but just lots of different kind of writing techniques. Really. And
I love that you talk about being middle class. I mean, your jokes are quite middle class. How does being Polish, your background, your heritage, as well as your current culture, how does that all tie in together in your set?
I think everybody struggles with kind of their identity and who are we, right? Because there's always more to the story than we ever have time to explain. And I think I just like to play with that in my set, because I do think my life is quite different to perhaps the way I come across and am perceived. But I'm not trying to change anyone's opinion of that. I'm a comic. I just want to make people laugh about it.
I love that. That's a great attitude. Do you go back to Poland often? Do you perform there?
I've never performed there. I do speak Polish, but it would be a struggle, I think, for me to do stand-up in Polish. But I've got family there, and I do go back.
Oh, lovely. And what's next for you?
What's next for me? Oh, I never think very far ahead. I'm enjoying what I'm doing at the moment. Just writing more, getting out there more, continuing to perform on the London circuit. I'm in 2 Camden Fringe shows coming up in July and August. The first is a show called Inner Idiots on at the Museum of Comedy, and the second is with my improv group, The Pilots, and that will be at Canal Cafe in Camden. So look those up. Hopefully you can Google them and find them. But yeah, I'll be there.
Fantastic. And then just last thing, if you had words of wisdom for somebody who wants to start out, what would you tell them?
What would I tell them? Do it. Just do it, but also find out really what makes you laugh. Yeah. I think the clearer you get on what you find funny, the easier you'll find it to be funny yourself.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Anthony. Anthony Heston, everyone.
And finally, our headliner for today, darlings. I've never seen him wear a suit. And he cares about you so much. And the first impression that he makes on you, he wore a suit. I couldn't recognize him. Dave Lynch! Yay! Looking very smart indeed. Welcome to the set.
Hello everyone, my name's Dave Lynch. I've come here today dressed as a footballer on remand. So that's all. Or a very, very ginger Donald Trump. Whatever you want. Whatever you want. In today's climate, probably not something I want to be associated with, but, you know, I've put this on now, so we're going with it. Welcome to the show. Things I want to talk about. Social media. Social media is a big part of our lives now. Some of you might be watching this on social media, and if you are, hello. Don't scroll. Just click here with the like button and then you can go. But talking about social media, Instagram, you might be watching this on Instagram Reel maybe, or YouTube, or whatever you're watching on. It's so good to have you here. But Instagram is a fantastic social media platform. I mean, we're all on all the big platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, if you're still on it. MySpace, I kind of missed that one. Tom was my only friend. But Instagram's my favourite social media platform. For lots of reasons, especially being a comedian, it's great. You can promote shows, you can appear on a reel like this, you know, and you can hear about other comedians. There's one thing about Instagram that fucks me up the wall, and that is the inspirational quotes, all right? Now, if you're sitting at home right now and you've never seen one of these, I'll explain very quickly what it is. You'll be going through your feed on Instagram, and out of nowhere, what'll appear will be like a picture of a beach, right, with a sunset. And over that picture, in calligraphy writing, it'll say something like, "You go, girl." And I can't relate to that. I can't be at the bar after this show tonight with a couple of mates, and they're like, "You seem a bit chipper tonight, Dave." And I'm like, well, Instagram told me to go, you know. But I was going through my feed the other day, and I saw one of these quotes, and it was different, right? It grabbed me. It resonated with me. Because what it said was, "You're never too old, and it's never too late." Wow. So I've decided to become a child actor. If Instagram says I can, fuck it, right? But social media is great, you know, and there's lots of different apps. There's dating apps and stuff. I didn't meet my girlfriend on a dating app, but we were quite happy for a while. Let me tell you a story. So we were together for a couple of years. Now, I hate the term anniversary when you're not married, right? I think it's a ridiculous statement. But what I do like is the idea that you buy each other presents. Some of you may be watching this right now and it's your anniversary and or it's coming up and you're thinking about what present to buy that person. Well, here's what you don't do, all right? Because I wanted to get my girlfriend something that would show her how much she meant to me and how much I loved her. So I took out a life insurance policy on myself and gifted her that policy. And she got me skydiving lessons. So, you know, we didn't stay together long. I actually wanted to take the skydiving lessons, but unfortunately the parachute opened. So, you know, we're not together anymore. I've got a new girlfriend now. She's great. She was in London with me recently, and I was in a very bad mood. I'll tell you why I was in a bad mood, because the same thing happened to me today. right? If you're not from London and you're watching this, you may have been to London, you may understand this, you may not. In London, we have a thing called the escalator rule, all right? On the tube, the escalator rule is very simple. Stand on the right, walk on the left, okay? We all understand this. We're not animals, we live in a society, all right? Now, I was walking up to the escalator on the tube recently, and I got to the left-hand side to walk down, and this thing was 6 people deep. And I was so pent up with anger and frustration about it, but I'm also British. So what it festered up to was really just something more like, you know, not enough to tell the people in front of me that were actually causing the problem how annoyed I was, just enough to show the people around me how annoyed I was. It's a very British thing. You know when you see a British person who's annoyed and you're annoyed as well, and you'd look at them and they're tutting, you're like, yeah, solidarity, brother. It was one of those kind of moments, you know? And so I had a real good think about this, and I thought, and you may not like this is where we need to become more American. Stay with me on this, right? I promise you, right? Because I've seen Americans in London, right? And when they're, okay, not Americans per se, New Yorkers, right? New Yorkers, they know how to get around, man. Because a New Yorker will get to London and just turn it into New York. They're not polite, they're lovely people, but they're not polite, you know? They're not going to stand in a queue, and they're not going to be gracious on the sidewalk, whatever they call it, pavement, get it right, lads, right? You know, what they're going to do is they're just going to barge people out the way, you know, men, women, children. I've seen them do it, right? It's ridiculous. Because an American would get to the top of that left-hand side of the escalator, look down 6 people deep, and go, hey, buddy! Fucking move! You know what? And then they get to the bottom of the escalator, the person that was blocking them would turn around and go, what? And they go, thank you, and move on. Because Americans know how to deal with the situation. And do you know how I know that the way that Americans deal with their lifestyle and their cities is better than the way we do it? Is because that happened to me 3 hours ago, and I'm still mad about it. Ridiculous, man. So my new girlfriend is American, funnily enough, so she's not going to like this, but, you know, she's not here for the shoot. No, my girlfriend's great. My girlfriend's phenomenal. She's funny, she's beautiful, she's smart, and I often look at my girlfriend and I think, wow, she's lucky to have me. But, you know, life wasn't always like this. We were kids once. Not too long ago for some of us, a long time ago for some of us. I'll let you decide how old you think I am, but if you run AI on my face right now, I will find you. So when I was at school, all right, I want to cast your minds back. I want to take you back to Year 9 GCSE Spanish. All right, Year 9 GCSE Spanish. There was a lad sitting next to me who didn't speak a word of English, right? He was from Chile, okay? And on the first day of this class, the teacher realized very quickly that he could speak Spanish. And she just went absolutely ballistic at him. She was like, who the hell do you think you are coming into this school and my class and undermining me and underlining this school system? She just got really, and I'll be honest, I don't think she could speak it either. You know, because that never made any sense to me. The idea, essentially what she was saying was, and this was 14 years ago, and it stuck with me because it's so illogical. Essentially what she was trying to say was, if you're really good at a subject, you're not allowed to take a class in that subject. How does that make sense? That's essentially like saying you've got a kid in the school who's got like a genius level IQ. He now can't take maths class just because naturally he's going to be more inclined to be really good at that subject? No? All right, okay, let me give you another example. I'll give you another example, all right? You've got a girl in the school who, her father is a famous poet, all right? She now can't take English just because she is more likely to be really adept at taking that Anyway, I wasn't allowed to do sex education, but the point... Thank you so much for watching my set. I'll see you on the next one.
Amazing. That was so fun, and I'm still smirking about the escalator. I really get that resonates.
That really did happen to me.
I can believe it.
It happens too much. I don't understand why. I think it's often people who are visiting the city. You go to any other city, because I get the same thing, but I get annoyed the opposite way now, because I've now moved to Birmingham. They don't have the same rule. People stand wherever they want. It's chaos. I think we need to mandate this. I think if a party could run in this election coming up and they could just say we're going to put the escalator rule across the whole country, they would win the vote.
I was going to say, a lot of your set is very politically minded, actually. I love that. Yeah, and I think sometimes you need that. Sometimes we do need to be reminded that there are some very stupid things going on in the world. Yeah. How do you get your inspirations for your material?
It's often just spotting things. Random things happen to me, and I open up my notes in my phone and write them down very quickly. That's it, really. I think most comedians do, but I've got a notes page in my phone with probably 1,000 jokes in it. Not 1,000 fully formulated jokes at all, but like kind of a little Bible or so that I can go into and kind of pick things out and go, yeah, I remember that, and start to formulate the joke from there. That's
fantastic. Now, you have hosted comedy clubs and comedy nights. What's the difference between hosting and performing, or is there a blend of the two?
There's a bit of a blend. When you're opening a show, you're doing 5 or 10 minutes, so you're doing your own material often. But it is a very different discipline because you're also interacting with people and trying to get to know the audience. And your whole job opening the show as an MC is to warm up the crowd for the first comedian. And the job you do can really then determine the set that the next comedian has. So it is a different discipline, yeah.
Yeah. And how do you A, enjoy that, and B, how do you read the room?
It's difficult. You can often tell within the first minute and a half how a room's going to go. Some rooms take longer to warm than others, but it's really that first joke. If you can get that first joke and get a big laugh, you're like, we're gonna have fun tonight.
I love that. And given your experience, how do you construct a set? If you don't mind me asking, is spilling your secrets here.
No, absolutely. So if I'm doing a half an hour or 45-minute set, my personal style is I like storytelling. All right, all my favourite comedians are big storytellers. Jim Jeffries is my favourite comedian, and so for me, it's the whole set is one story. Okay, most of the time I'll try and have a theme. So my show last year was called Take This Seriously, and was all about getting assaulted. And so the whole show was about getting assaulted, but it wasn't about the actual act itself, because that's not funny. It was about all the random things that happened leading up to it and after it, you know. And, you know, you can go off on these little tangents and stuff in the story, but you're always trying to get back to that main river.
Yeah. I mean, that must take a lot of practice. How do you hone that craft? What would you say to somebody who, they've got their notepad, they've got all those ideas, they kind of know that they have that theme, but there's something about the delivery and the connection with the audience. How do you practice that?
You can't, it's not like music. It's not like learning the guitar where you can practice in your bedroom for hours and hours and hours until you get the song right, and then you go out and perform it. Comedy doesn't work like that. You can write and write and write, and that's basically rule number one, but there's no better way to practice than to be on stage. And that is what the circuit is for.
That's brilliant. And with your hosting, do you do open mic nights for new comedians?
Absolutely. So I run 2 open mic nights in central London. It's Quintessential Comedy and Cuts Comedy. And they are new act, new material nights. So the whole idea of them is we get experienced comedians come and perform with us to try out new material for a show they're doing or a TV performance or whatever, but we also welcome people who are doing 10 ever gigs, 5 ever gigs, or even their first ever gig. We want you to come with us and try it out and see if you like it, and then hopefully you'll catch the bug like the rest of us did and you'll carry on with it.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what are you working on at the moment?
So my main project in comedy, other than my stand-up itself, is a company called Gig Gag. Gig Gag is an app and a platform, really, for comedians to find shows. So comedy clubs and comedy nights put up their gigs on the platform, and then if you're a comedian, you sign up with a free account and just start applying for shows.
Fantastic. Dave Lynch, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Woo!
Well, we hope you enjoyed tonight. What a fantastic lineup. Some of our favourite males on the comedy circuit, favourite creatives, and we hope you have a lovely, giggly week ahead. This was just to kind of give you a little starter. Enjoy and see you next time on Skits.